Evan, thank you. That was amazing. That was amazing. The message I want to share with you today is a work in progress. You know, speakers like me, pastors, when we give our sermons and messages, if you get an idea, open up a file. At least that's what I do. And I opened up a file on this topic because of what was happening, about 10 years ago, maybe 12 years ago. But I was reminded of it because what's been happening now, although it's not making the news. The Ebola outbreak this year in the Congo has killed over 1,000 people, probably close to 2,000 now, and growing 3 times faster than the 2014-2016 epidemic that is considered the worst on record. It was during that first outbreak that I came across this heartbreaking story from StoryCorps about nurses in Sierra Leone. One day, an Ebola-infected mother brought her baby into a hospital. The mother died, and the baby was left in a box. They tested the baby, and the baby was negative. But the symptoms in babies and the disease progression in babies was different than adults. So the nurses would pick up and cuddle the baby, and they were taking care of the baby in the box. 12 of those nurses subsequently contracted Ebola. Only one survived. You see, they couldn't just watch a baby sitting alone in a box. So perhaps I think such stories can live on. It certainly has lived on in my heart all these years to tug at our humanity and direct us to a path of sacrificial love. Which brings me to another story. We don't really know if it's factual or not, but the meaning behind it is so powerful. There's a story about St. Francis of Assisi. He was riding along a dusty road when he encountered a man with leprosy. Now, in his day, lepers lived beyond the edges of society. They carried not only illness, but also isolation. They were feared, avoided, forgotten. Francis himself admitted that nothing filled him with greater revulsion. His first impulse was the same as ours often is, to look away. But on that ordinary road, on that ordinary day, something extraordinary happened. He stopped. He climbed down from his horse. He walked toward the man. He embraced him, and he kissed him. Later, Francis wrote that what had once been bitter became sweetness to his soul. You see, the leper didn't become beautiful. Francis learned to see beauty differently. Perhaps that's where every spiritual journey begins. Not by changing the world first, but by changing the way we see it. The poet Mary Oliver once asked, "Tell me, what is it that you plan to do with your one wild and precious life?" Well, I would offer today that another question belongs beside it. What are you no longer willing to turn from? Because every one of us has become skilled, I think, to some degree, at looking away. We look away from suffering because it can be overwhelming. We look away from loneliness because it reminds us of our own. We look away from injustice because it feels too heavy. We look away from aging because it whispers our own mortality. And sometimes At least it's true for me. Sometimes we even look away from ourselves, the parts that ache, the parts that doubt, the parts that have forgotten that they are worthy to be loved. Thich Nhat Hanh often reminded us that the miracle is not to walk on water, but to walk upon the earth with awareness. To truly see another person is already an act of love. I had read that quote from him numerous times, as well as reading his books, and it reminded me of the simplicity of it all. When was the last time you ever felt seen? When was the last time you ever felt heard? Perhaps the greatest thing we all could do, we don't even have to say anything, is to provide that, one person at a time, wherever we go. I've talked about that before when I've been here, kind of weave it into a message here and there. You see, when we slow down enough to see, to truly see with our eyes, but also with our heart, I think something miraculous happens, because strangers become neighbors. How many times did you have a conversation with somebody? It doesn't matter where the location was, but you started to do that, or they started to talk to you, and often you realize you had so much more in common than you did differently. I like to say that back in the day when I was a hospice chaplain, I'd walk into a home and I'd see a picture of Barack and Michelle Obama, and that told me a little bit of something, but I didn't say anything because I was there for the loved one, and they didn't say anything because I was there for their loved one. And I remember walking into one home and saw a picture of Donald Trump and Melania on the wall, and I didn't say anything because that wasn't the reason I was there, and they didn't say anything because they wanted me to provide some comfort and some words to them. And I realized in those moments, forget politics, if it never entered the conversation, we all had more in common than I thought. In both situations, we had friends, similar friends. I'm always amazed by that, especially now in our country, because I think it's true. I don't think our country is divided as much as we think. I think politicians are dividing our country, and news media is dividing our country. But I don't know about you, but it's always when I slow down. Most of my life, I never slowed down. I was a workaholic, talked faster, walked faster, drove faster. But when I slow down, it calms my heart. I have the privilege of being up here and looking into all your beautiful eyes, and I see beautiful souls. And I'm guessing we all, in some way, have something in common. We both love Heartland. We both love Evan's music. There's a lot of things like that. When we slow down enough to see, strangers become neighbors, perceived enemies. Perceived enemies become human beings. And the walls that we have carefully built, well, they begin to soften a little bit. Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel wrote that our goal should be to live in radical amazement. I love that phrase, radical amazement, ecstasy, awe, wonder, all of those are my favorite words. And the older I get, the more eccentric I want to be, to start living that out every day. But I love that quote from him. What if amazement, though, begins when we stop categorizing people and begin encountering them? The philosopher Martin Buber described life as a choice between I, it, and I, thou. You see, the I, it world, it's efficient. It labels. It measures. It even judges. It reduces people to categories. An I, thou world is different. It pauses. It listens. It reverences, one of my favorite words. It reverences. It knows that every encounter is holy. Every encounter. And I've learned in my life, often the hard way, that when I can grasp hold of that and have it leave my head of knowledge and drop down into my heart of illumination, that's when your life starts changing. I'm not 100% good at this, but I try everywhere I go, whether it be a grocery store or a restaurant. I try to go in and stop myself and say, Richard, every encounter is a holy moment. And it's amazing how it almost softens your heart. A little extra kind of that waitress or waiter. Or you have to wait in line instead of saying, okay, as I tended to do many times, I would say, oh, there's a reason for that. Let me look around. Or maybe just silently bombard people with love bombs. Don't have to say a word. It changes things. You see, Francis didn't kiss a disease. He kissed a human being. And in doing so, he crossed the invisible boundary between fear and love. When you think about it, perhaps every age has its lepers. They are those that society pushes aside: the refugee, the immigrant, the incarcerated, the addict, the housing challenged, the transgender teenager wondering if there's a place where they will feel safe, the exhausted caregiver, the grieving widow or widower, the elderly person who has become invisible. And by the way, I saw that happen time and time again in those nursing homes I visited, especially when families didn't visit, and it would break your heart. And I try to imagine what it's going to be like when I get to be that age. And then my daughters just laugh. Oh, Dad, we'll take you out. Don't worry. We know you don't want to be in a nursing home. Thank you, daughters. The lonely neighbor whose name we've never learned. You know, I've tried to rectify that myself on my walks. I'll stop and say, wow, what a beautiful dog. I'll try to look for a hook. And I'm starting to get to know neighbors where for a while I didn't even know who they were. And perhaps the most difficult leper is the one within ourselves. The wounded child, the hidden shame, the grief we'd carried for years, the fear of death, the places where we believe we are somehow unworthy of belonging. Carl Jung observed, and I love this quote, I'm going to repeat it twice. Carl Jung observed, what we resist not only persists, but will grow in size. Now think about that. Think about something maybe you're resisting right now. What we resist not only persists, but it will grow in size. I believe that the spiritual path, a lot of books, a lot of podcasts about the spiritual path. I believe that the spiritual path invites us not, thank God, toward perfection, but toward integration. See, that's wholeness, light and shadow. Not around suffering, but through it. Because love can't heal what it refuses to touch. Love can't heal what it refuses to touch. The mystics have always known this. Julian of Norwich looked upon a suffering world and still heard the words, all shall be well. Howard Thurman, one of my favorite mystics, civil rights activist, wrote that we are sustained by the sound of the genuine within us. Rainier Maria Rilke urges us, of course, to live the questions. That's probably really hard for me, but to live the questions. We don't always have the answers. And Francis, well, Francis simply kissed the leper. Different voices. The same invitation. Move closer see more deeply, love more courageously. Perhaps salvation is not rescue from the world, but awakening within the world. Perhaps enlightenment is not escaping suffering, but discovering that we belong to one another, including our suffering. And my favorite quote, as Ram Dass so simply says, we're all just walking each other home. And that's been the beauty of this fellowship, this community at Heartland. There's always been that sense of that since the beginning. Every encounter becomes an opportunity to lessen the distance between us. Every act of compassion widens the circle. Every moment of genuine presence heals something we cannot measure. The road Francis walked is still before us. Every morning, we wake to its invitation. Question is, will we hurry past or will we stop? Will we keep ourselves safely untouched or will we risk tenderness? May we become people who are less interested in being right than in being present. Less interested in certainty than in compassion. Less interested in protecting ourselves than in enlarging our hearts. And perhaps one day we too will discover what Francis discovered on that dusty road. That what we feared was never our enemy. It was our teacher. It was our doorway. It was waiting to awaken us to the simple, astonishing truth that beneath every face, beneath every wound, beneath every difference, and beneath every longing, there's one life, one love, one sacred belonging. So this morning, Heartland, may we have the courage to kiss the leper. And in doing so, may we discover the sweetness that has been waiting for us all along. Amen.